Today, I'm going to talk about a topic of employment contract. Should you have one with your people, with your team? Now, I'm not talking about the standard contract where it spill out about working hours, how much annual leaves, what are the sick leaves, and these are the essential part, but more towards the customized legal agreement where if your employee were to join your company, is there a certain non-disclosure terms that they have to sign? Is there a conflict of interest clause in place? Is there what happens if they decide to move to the next branch or office or next to your competitor? Can they actually take your clients away or share your details? How do you gonna work around that? So I'm going to talk about all those parts, but before we dwell into that, I want to give you a scenario. So let's say in a small business or medium-sized business, you will come across once in a while where you will have to employ people that you kind of trust, okay, that perhaps from a referral or referee, that friends of a friend, or maybe someone that your existing staff member recommended her friend to work with you or his friend to work with you. And because there's already a very solid relationship and you say, hey, why not? Birds of the same wing flocks together. So if the caliber is good, maybe the friend is it's much better or equal in terms of caliber. So you will come across a lot of situations where you have to hire people based on your trust feeling, based on the feeling that, you and that person get on really well, that this person tick all your boxes, and very possible likely that you may not have that kind of vigilance with them, because after all, they are your kind of friends and within your inner circle. And my advice is that regardless of who they are, whether they are completely off from the street or they apply from your job ads, or whether they are from your friend of a friend or from a referral, you should always have an agreement, an employment terms agreement or contract of agreement to spell out who owns the data. If they were to create their secret recipe, let's say if they're a chef and you pay them for the hours and they create or master or innovated a secret recipe and it works well, who owns that recipe? In the realm of property management or realm of sales, where kind of like he or she have to use your company's resources and contacts and facilities in order to get clients. Now, in the end of the day, if he or she were to depart, who owns those clients? So you have to get those nitty-gritty ironed out before you even employ them. And even if they were to move on, in which most likely they will move on, well, will there be a restriction clause in place, a trade restriction place, where it means that they cannot work within a kilometers, 15, 20, 25 kilometers, because otherwise there will be a conflict of interest in that sense. So you have to iron those out. Okay, you have to talk about the tough questions, whether or not they are your people, they're your friends, that you know them really well. If you don't get that thing ironed out, let's say fast track, you based on good feelings, you hire them because they are honest, they are reputable, they are articulate, they come from good family background, they've got good ethical work ethic sense, they tick pretty much every single box, right? And over time, there has been some form of frictions, disagreement, differences in opinion, differences in how things work, and there will always be discontent at work. Differences in opinion is one of them, and you get into an argument, you get into a dispute, and they say, look, I don't think we are the right fit, and we decide to move out, or he decide or to move out to the next company or work to the next company, which is all good. Sometimes it's not just not the right fit, but in business, there will always be differences in perception. In their category, they may feel that they may be mistreated. There's some kind of injustice that they are experiencing working for your company. But on your end, you may be justifying that, hey, I've spent so much time training you from scratch, or I've given you the opportunity where where without me, you wouldn't even be able to get the job or even have the first step to the industry. Because of me, you should thank me. So it really depends on which side of the table that you're standing on. Some on the employer side, they may think that, well, I'm paying you, every single dollar, all the entitlement you receive. And as a result, I have taken a chance to level you up. And now you have the wings and you decided to fly, which is fantastic, which is okay. But when you decided to take my clients, and that's where the employer kind of get upset. And when that situation did arise, you, as a business owner, of course, you feel upset because you trusted them in the first place. And you feel really disappointed is the key word, but most likely you feel cheated, feel exploited. All this negative emotion comes in place and you feel really being ripped off. Okay. Now from their angle, they may have a different perspective. They may think that, well, without me, you wouldn't be able to get this lead. Without my special skills, you wouldn't have this kind of customers. Without my secret recipe, my artisan skills, you were never able to get this dish out of it. Let's say if you're working in a hospitality industry, without my skills, there will be no chance that you can cook this dish, because it requires their collective years of cookery experience. So it really depends on which side of the table. But in my perspective, again, verify with the lawyer, it is important that you have anyone who step into your office, whether or not they are your friends, family members, or from outsiders, to sign a contract, either a non-disclosure statement, intellectual property ownership terms, or agree to some form of trade restriction clause that will prevent them from working close to where you are if they were to move on. My opinion, if I can infer to you, is that an employee who works with you, if you were to pay them per hour or in wages or in salary, anything that they create or they design or innovate during the working time in which you pay for it, plus superannuation or any of these retirement funds, plus annual leaves, it is your company's assets. Okay, they may come from an angle where they say, well, without me, you wouldn't be able to get this clients, or without me, this secret juice or this secret recipe wouldn't surface anyway. Well, that one way can argue that without your facilities, without your infrastructure, your technology, and also the opportunity to pay them, that recipe will not materialize. Regardless what the fundamental rule of thumb is, if they are working for you and any innovation or intellectual property that they have created, any clients that they have acquired during the time when they work with you belongs to you. This includes database. This includes customers' details. Now, what should you do? That's the next question. You are facing a problem where they have downloaded your clients list, or they are already stealing your customers over, or they have decided to walk away with their secret recipe. If you're running a restaurant or hospitality industry, what do you do? Should you commence legal proceeding? Okay, well, those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. Do you have the energy to commence legal proceeding? How severe is the case? Is it one or two or three clients? Is this going to be a once-off? Or do you preempt that it's going to be your entire customer list or clients list? And do you have proof that they have stole those information? Well, some of the situation, you may not have proof because you knew that is your client, and now he or she has hopped to another business operator, and the client is moving towards that particular business operator. Let's say if you're an accountant or lawyer, okay, your clients, which has been with you for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, has decided to move to your competitor. So some of the situations are so basic and so obvious that, well, does it qualify for you to lodge a legal proceeding on them? Now, I'm not a lawyer, okay? This is something that you have to ask yourself and speak to a lawyer. My point, I'm just giving you a overall conversational chit chat so that you can start thinking all these questions. A lawyer charges $450 per hour at the time of recording. This is a very general lowest fee. So you have to kind of work out the pros and cons. It's all right, $450 per hour, and often there's a minimum cost of $10,000 or $5,000. Okay, from there onwards, and then depending on whether they will contest with your position, then if they do contest, then you will be looking at a higher cost in legal fees. So you got to look at the big picture. In my experience of using multiple lawyers and going through engaging legal professionals, I can say that any case that you think it's a walk on the park, you will find that the safest bet will be a multiply of 3. If in your mind you say, look, I can get this done probably just 10 grand. Well, multiply by 3 or 5 at least, okay? So you'll be looking at about $50,000. If you think if the lawyer quoted you, look, I think this matter can be resolved around $20,000, multiplied by 3, at least 3. So you're looking at $60,000, if not $80,000 to $90,000, around that range, depending on the other party. So you have to really go back to yourself, is it worth it? Okay, to pursue this thing and to get justice in place, is it really worth it? Or you can go back to the drawing board and say, what have I stuffed up? How did this situation happen to me? And it all comes back to contract systems and securities in your database, okay? It all comes back to your own internal part. You cannot prevent your employees from stealing your assets, if you're in a service-based industry, it will be your clients. If you are in a product-based industry, it will be probably the intellectual property or the patent of the structure, okay, the ingredient. So you can't really prevent that. If they have the drive, you can't prevent that, but you can of course mitigate that by, again, signing the contract. Because if you have some kind of a contract in place, and I'm not talking about those entitlement, I'm talking about what I've just mentioned: intellectual property rights, restriction or trade restrictions, non-disclosure statements. These are of course the most core terms and conditions in your contract. If you had them sign that, at least there is a red flag whenever they start to think, well, you know what I can do? I can download all the database of the clients, and then I'm going to use them in my new business, or I'm going to start my own business, right? They will always have the opening up a possible legal case because they are at fault. But if you don't have a contract in place, it's a very fluid way of you as an employer putting a certification, putting a base on a claim, because you got nothing to base it on. Okay, you can talk about the generic principle, but you don't have a contract in place. So I highly recommend that you need to have these clause in your employment contract or employee contract before they even come into your business realm, because your business data highly sensitive. There are your assets, money, okay? When a business, let's say one day decide to sell a business, your potential buyer would want your client's details. That's what you are selling. Not just the systems, not just the growth profits or the revenue, but also the potential clients' database that are potentially giving you or the buyer potential revenue income. So that is number one, get the contract in place. Number two is that you have to make sure that, yes, trusting them with your full heart is all good, but anyone who comes into your realm to work all have their agenda. You can call them secret agenda or personal agenda. It could be agenda to start their own business. It could be agenda of a stepping stone. It could be agenda to perhaps steal your information. It could be agenda to self-growth or personal growth. There's plenty of agenda, whether it's altruistic or from the greedy part of it. So what do you want to do? In that situation, from that angle, you have to make sure that you trust but verify. You don't give full trust. And one of the action that to demonstrate you don't give full trust is that your computer system, that you apply permission onto your database. Only certain people have access to your database. You will never give full access to all the database. Now you may say, well, my software doesn't have that ability. Well, if your software as we speak now doesn't have that, you have to find the next software that has that permission-based capability. Otherwise, you're technically exposing your cards, your assets to people. You don't expose your bank account to people. You don't show to your people, your team, how much savings you've got in your bank account. So why should you show off or expose how many clients you have and what are the value of each client, or where they are, their email address, their phone numbers? You don't show that. So it's the same metaphor. If you're not comfortable showing your people, your team, your staff members of your bank accounts, why should you show them your clients' details? They can access your client details, but only that is related to the case or to the work that they're working on, but not the entire list. If you've got 600, 1,000 client lists, restrict that. And if you say, I don't have a software for that, well, keep finding. And that's where your constant growth, your time should be spent on working on the business. And this is one of the activities of working on the business. How to protect your assets, which is your clients. How to protect your systems, your secret recipe, which is systemizations and intellectual property. And that is where the protection comes in. Otherwise, hey, you don't need competitors attacking you. You have your own people attacking you whenever they've decided to flip. Whenever you say the wrong words, or they have some kind of a grievance towards you, maybe because they feel that they're not getting paid enough, they're getting mistreated, and you're a bad boss, and a lot of all these emotional things happen, okay? And you can't really solve that problem because there are no right and no wrong in the ultimate picture. It really depends on which side of the table that you're standing against. So that's tip number 2, is that make sure that you systemize, and especially systemize and apply a high level of security on your greatest assets, which is client's database. The number 3 is look inwards. The inwards part is almost the most difficult and challenging to swallow, because everything that happens that you're going through right now, the disappointment, the sadness, the feeling of being exploited, taken advantage by your employee, or a reflection of how you see your business. Now, there is a certain ownership or certain behavior that you have to own, which is maybe you're too trusting, or maybe you just don't have the time to systemize your business. You don't have the time to optimize, to automate, or to invest in security of your database. All this requires time, yes, and money as well. But your perception of underestimating these conditions that says, look, they are not important, I should focus more on sales, is the root cause of today's situation. I hope you don't experience that, but if you do, that there's always a cause and effect scenario where it's about your mindset. If you believe that data security is not important, is not the top of your list, well, there's a higher chance that you're going to experience your internal staff members who you trusted them have stolen, downloaded all your details. Number 2 is that the neglection of not paying attention to your people, or not having a contract in place because you've kind of undermined the effectiveness, then you also increase the chance of experiencing that situation where your employee have taken you for an advantage. There are many cases where employees decided to clone your business systems, innovate, and start their own company. And if you don't have a restriction clause in place, they can just start next door. Okay, they can call all your customers and say, hey, do you remember me? Yeah, I remember you. Why don't you come to my service? I can offer you much better service. And you and I know, if you have clocked enough hours, there are certain customers that do not have loyalty. If their only loyalty is friendliness, okay, and sometimes the loyalty is money. If your team member, staff member decided to start their own business and say, look, in order to win your clients over, he's going to chop 20% off. You'll be surprised that most of your clients will walk away from you and jump ship to them simply because of a 10 or 20% off discount or introductory rate. And especially if you haven't sold enough relationship with that particular client. So you are in a very challenging position. I hope that doesn't happen to you, but it can be mitigated. It can be prevented. First of all, you have to go through those pointers that I've talked about. Contract in place, must sign, no matter how good, all these good feelings you have with them at the beginning. Number 2, systemize, automate, and apply high level of security on your greatest assets, which are client database. Number 3, look inward, see what lessons have you learned here, and then make sure you jot it down, read it every day until it's so into your consciousness. If you don't fix this one, if you don't fix this in a mindset, then there is a high chance that you're going to repeat again in the next phase and re-experience this saga again, which is pretty unfortunate. So that's all there is. If you find this information valuable, thumbs up, follow, or subscribe. Otherwise, hey, this is just my experience. Again, I'm not a solicitor, so please just listen to this information as in sharing you my experience based on my 15, 16, 18 plus years in business that I've gone through. And I'm just sharing with you so that you know how to ask the right question with your solicitor, with your lawyer, if you do decide to venture into the legal proceeding part. All right, good luck to your business success, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.